Described as a non-ideal solution or a nearly ideal fluid, a treasure trove of biologically active organic compounds, a microbial environment, a nutritious food, a toxic drug, a value-added agricultural product, a means of preserving fruit, a historical artifact, a local tradition, an economic entity, bottled poetry, and so on. Those approaches aren't mutually exclusive. They intersect, but beginning with any one of them leads to asking different kinds of questions about how wine works, each useful in its own ways. Wine science is not a set of facts. Science is a set of processes, and the knowledge built through those processes changes over time. In other words, facts are unstable. They're subject to change. Some are more unstable than others. Scientific research can't help but involve incremental fits and starts, including some wrong turns and missteps that only become recognizable as such further down the road. Misunderstanding science as a set of facts is the root of all kinds of problems. People who aren't scientists are sometimes surprised, dismayed, even angry when the science changes. People who are scientists are sometimes surprised, dismayed, even angry that everyone else doesn't do what the science says. Neither leaves much room for other folks doing things with scientific knowledge other than what they do. A restriction totally at odds with the idiosyncratically place-based, deliciously diverse, occasionally artistic world of wine. Wine science isn't a set of instructions about how to make wine. It follows from the first 2 points that science is not a prescription for how things should be done. All research arises in specific physical and cultural locations, moments in history, motivations for doing the work, and so on. Findings from a drought-plagued Californian Pinot Noir vineyard won't necessarily transfer to a drippier one in Oregon or Burgundy. They must be interpreted in light of local conditions. Moreover, science is one set of ways of knowing about the world, not the only or universally best way. Ideally, scientific findings about intensifying color in a particular Californian Pinot Noir work together with what can be learned from walking vineyards and watching ferments, wherever you are. Science isn't good for everything. Mastery of the phenolic chemistry behind wine astringency and color will never replace the experience of drinking Pinot Noir, any more than knowing about the chemical composition of an artist's paints replaces beholding a painting. Most of all, because research is always grounded in values and perspectives about what is important to know and why, you can hold science in high esteem without agreeing with the idea of better wine baked into any given part of it. The wine industry is replete with examples of practitioners reading scientific research, integrating it with other things they know, and coming up with something that researchers didn't necessarily expect or intend, though the scientific establishment isn't always thrilled about that. In the academic and practical field known as research utilization or technology transfer, the goal of communicating research is usually adoption. That is, convincing your target audience to implement research findings as intended by the organization doing the communicating. Full disclosure, I wrote a 443-page doctoral thesis about, among other things, why that approach is theoretically insupportable and practically misguided, especially in the wine industry. The most important thing to say from all of that work is this: winemakers and wine growers use scientific research in innumerable ways that don't necessarily align with the expectations of scientific institutions, because those winemakers may have knowledge, values, and priorities that differ from the institutions. Vanishingly few winemakers are anti-science. Most take pains to learn about new research. Most account for research findings, alongside practical experience and local convention, when they have a decision to make or a problem to solve. None of that means that they do what the science says, not least because research rarely spits out instructions, Though universities or national wine programs and other institutions sometimes make research findings into instructions, in the context of